Wastewater Management Advisory Committee. It is January 8th, and we are here in the Nauset Room in person, and Bob Mullen, member by Zoom. We are also joined by Tim Harrison from AECom and George Missouri on Zoom, and we may in the future be joined by Mike Giggy on Zoom.
1072.
I'm sorry?
1072. We are being live streamed on 1072.
Thank you. We are being live streamed on channel 1072.
I appreciate that, Mrs. Barber. Thank you.
All right, is there public comment? Charlie? And Charlie, I would ask that you limit your comments to new material that has not yet been mentioned. We have all received your comments in the mail.
Indeed, I was about to say that I think my request to the committee would be that you address, maybe when Mike Giggy joins us, a few specific questions that I raised. There are a number of other comments that I made in my communication I don't think we need to discuss today, but in my email, the questions or comments that I made, numbers 1, 5, and 6, along with the questions that appear at the end of my email, seem worthy of discussion amongst the committee members and the consultants.
Okay, and that said, I would also request that we move Mill Pond evaluation to the end of the agenda and instead get into 3, 4, 5 in hopes of Mike being able to join us later in the meeting. So that being the case, do we have John Nelson?
He's here.
Okay. You're sort of hiding behind Bob there. And also, Tim, can one of you update our sewer construction status, or both?
Sure, I'll go first, and John can supplement from his perspective.
Thank you.
So for phase 2 sewer construction status, the project is not ready for substantial completion yet. The contractor has been making progress. Most of the field items are done. They're not really out in the streets anymore. There's a couple of items that need to be resolved, and most of the work remaining is documentation. One of the key things that needs to happen before we can recommend substantial completion is a clear water test that may be required by DEP. So we are working towards scheduling that. So we basically need to have kind of the most critical elements for having the facility operate safely and correctly need to be complete. We're also finishing up a operations and maintenance manual update, as well as updating a report that we had previously submitted to DEP on the WIC performance. So all of those things should be done in short order here, is our hope, and then we can schedule that clear water test with DEP.
Okay,
And
so
then we will
do we
work
have
with DEP.
any anticipated date for substantial completion, or at this point, impossible to tell?
We're still pushing for January, February timeframe.
Okay.
And we can certainly provide an update if it continues to slip.
Okay, yes.
Just a question, what percentage of the tie cards have been completed at this point?
Yeah, that's a good question. I know that
John, very good question.
I think that I think I heard most recently that there's on the order of 80 sewer tie cards remaining,
Okay.
and more than that on the water tie cards. So
John.
that's
John Nelson, Tenable Lanes. From my point is we've been working on the mailing list, the order to connect letter to update that. I've been fending off calls of missing tie cards, so hopefully they'll get those done so the last remaining couple of streets can start their plans, because there's been many people that have already done their engineering or started it, and are just waiting for little bits of information. A lot of contractors want to drop off their applications, so there is going to be a pretty decent rush, I think, in the beginning once this opens up.
Okay, Ginny.
And I will speak for the Board of Water and Sewer and say that Mary and I are going to finalize the letter that will go to Phase 2
I did
Prop-
see that this morning, so I can
property
stick around
owners.
after
Right,
to
okay,
say,
property owners, and hopefully get that out in the next week ahead of the Board of Water and Sewer, just very generally giving them the information they need, the property owners, to
Yes.
begin the process.
It looked a lot better than, I think, the initial one that people wanted to send out.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
I've even made a couple more improvements. It'll be
We,
fabulous.
yeah, it'll be to everybody this afternoon, hopefully.
They will know that it's not the official letter.
No,
It's very clear.
it
It's
clearly
very clear.
says you will soon get a letter from Board of Health. This letter is informational and tells you 2 steps you need to take now.
Great.
not the 18
so-
or 16.
No, we took the whole process and we said, homeowners, this one's yours, this one's yours.
So delays are always disappointing. However, it's really good news to hear that people are chafing at the bit to get going on this.
There's quite a bit. I think
And
AECOM's reviewed.
that's what we're really looking for, is the motivation to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, there's
So
a lot of
good. And-
plans
and-
reviewed or in review with AECOM. I have contractors wanting to know when they can drop the application off. Right now, it's until the order to, when the order to connect a letter goes out, that's what I'm saying, I'll take them. If somebody has some, I'll take them, but there won't be any, I won't even look at them until the letter goes out.
Ginny?
So again, for the Board of Water and Sewer, we have tentatively scheduled a meeting for February 4th in case we can certify compliance, because the process is a completion that the Board of Water and Sewer has to certify substantial completion. And if it all works well, then on the 5th, the Board of Health can say they will issue the order to connect. Otherwise, it would wait until, what is it, the 18th, 19th, something like that. But it's like, it's going to
Yeah.
be a 1-2, and.
I think the
and
Board of
out.
Health too will set the date they want the letter to go out to, so, I mean, it could be within a couple days, it might be, March 1st or something, I don't know what their
But-
date they have in mind.
But we're keyed up in case it's done.
Okay, so thanks to the Board of Water and Sewer for being proactive on communicating with people about this, and to both Board of Health and Water and Sewer Commission for coordinating this. We will keep our fingers crossed. Okay, anything further on Phase 2 sewer construction?
One last question to John. John, are there any more of those little, the get-togethers that you've been having at the Council on Aging, or the,
That'll be starting up probably in March again. 'cause
March,
there's a
okay.
newsletter I have to get involved with, and it's
okay,
2 months out.
okay, so March dates will put out new consultation reviews for people that want to.
At the COA.
At the COA.
I'll be working on doing what I was doing before, just trying to change the time and
Okay,
the days.
but we'll publish that online,
Yes, I
so
mean,
everybody,
I'd be good about putting it out there. So
we'll put it out. So we'll put out the dates for when that happens, so everybody knows when they can
Perfect.
appear. Okay, thanks.
Okay, Phase 3 construction preparation. I think, Tim, we're back to you.
Absolutely. So let's see. So at this point, as you're aware, the SRF application was submitted. DEP did get back to us with a couple of requests for clarification, some minor additional information. So we're finalizing the response to that. Once that is submitted and DEP has approved those responses in that application package, then they'll issue the approval to advertise. That will start the bidding period for the project. And then we'll bid probably February through April, May timeframe is kind of what we're thinking right now. And then we will open any bids received and work with the lowest responsive bidder to see if we can come to a contract. At that point, we'll resubmit additional information to DEP so that they can issue the approval to award. And then the town will execute the contract with the contractor and we'll get going this summer.
Okay. So likely construction actual start in September.
Yeah, so the contract will be signed in June. Notice to proceed will probably be early July timeframe, and that will start a lot of the background paperwork and submittal process and things like that, probably with field work starting later in the summer, early fall.
Okay, great, thank you. And moving right along to phase 4, sewer planning.
All right. Well, we've taken the committee's direction to include the 4 areas that we had identified at the last meeting. We're in the process of putting together a scope and fee. It'll be similar to previous years, with a lot of additional emphasis placed on making sure that there's a lot of confidence gained throughout the pre-design period on what the actual flows would be to the treatment plant and downstream facilities. As we move into phase 4, especially with this larger phase 4 that the town has planned, we're bumping up against the edge of the existing facilities. So we may need to look at starting to upgrade some of the downstream facilities. We'll look into that, such as Pump Station 1, and maybe some of the carrier pipes. So yeah, it's exciting. The program is definitely moving along very quickly. Kudos to the town for keeping it on track. Yeah, that's the idea, is that we'll have a package ready for the town's review and incorporation into the Maytown warrant.
Okay, and as time rolls along, are we getting a better handle on actual flows versus estimated flows? That's always been sort of
Yeah.
a question in my mind. I mean, you go into this having to estimate what the flow will be several years down the road. But now that we're actually connected and there is actual flow on phase 1, have we been able to go back and look at how those actuals line up to estimated?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we've started that process. I know it feels like we've been doing this for years and years, and we have. But it's one of those things where, the longer the data period that we have, especially once we have a better sense for all of the properties being connected. We've had a big push of property connections in phase 1 of the last year. So as that less than 1 year of data from those properties turns into multiple years over the pre-design period, that's really going to be our main data source. Then we'll be able to wrap in the phase 2 properties as well.
Okay.
So that is absolutely part of what we're going to be looking at. And that kind of dovetails nicely with some of the work that Mike has been doing and that he reports to the committee on a approximately quarterly basis in terms of how does the water meter data align with what the treatment plant is seeing,
Right.
so that we can get a better sense for what the actual flow load to the treatment plant and the wastewater facilities actually is compared to the water meter data.
Yeah, because I think that's going to be key as we start moving forward and as we start getting closer to that point when we have to look to upgrade the treatment plant. It's going to be really crucial to know just exactly how much flow is going through that plant,
Yeah.
and how it aligns to the water department flows that are coming from the water meters.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's going to be another layer to when we turn the Phase 4 study area into a service area. So you'll recall the process that we went through for Phase 3, where we trimmed the study area. And that was just based on water quality and the TMDL requirements. We'll need to do the same thing for Phase 4, but we'll also need to layer in making sure that we aren't triggering a treatment plant and effluent disposal upgrade as part of Phase 4.
Right, Lynn?
Two things. One is the corollary to updating the flow against estimated would be the financial considerations, because I remember a decade ago, the Kathy Doan estimates on revenue, and I think we all anticipated day one, everything would be connected and the revenue would be flowing on the first day, and I'm exaggerating to make the point.
Right.
So, understanding the revenue impacts, and I'll call it remodeling revenue impacts phase by phase with regard to flow-related revenue as well as even connection-related revenue. And then the other part too is what factor do we use to include any anticipated density build-out of downtown? When might we put a slow factor in related to increased build-out of downtown? So,
Okay. Anything else?
Not on Phase 4, but could I ask a question about Phase 1 since we're...
Yes, you may.
To John Smith.
Yeah.
How's it going with the Board of Health and Phase 1 connections?
Phase 1 connections are almost all complete now. We've gotten practically every application in. We've only got a handful that we're still, shifting through the process. And those are, some of them are related to things that the town needs to do, as well as some of the things that the homeowners or the businesses have to do. So there are a couple for businesses along 6A. There are a couple of homeowners that we're working with. And there's one in particular that's town-related, that they put the connection in the wrong place, and we've got to figure all that out. So those are, but there's about, 6 or 8, depending on
That's
which
terrific
council.
news. That's
Okay.
great news.
Yeah.
Congratulations to you guys.
Thank you.
Very good.
Well, it's the staff of the Board of Health that's doing all the heavy lifting, so all we're doing is responding to what we're given. So we're thankful for all their help.
Pass it on, because
Well,
today
yes,
you're the
then-
public face.
And thank you to the Health Department staff.
Judith, I think we brought up two interesting things about understanding where we are versus expected, right? So whether it's financial or it's the flows. And it seems to me that we need to plan sort of how we give the committee a sense of both of those, sort of, can we look at what was expected and kind of where we are? Because I think just even if it was a quick sort of, okay, let's go back and remember what it is we said, I think that might be helpful for all of us to kind of get reacquainted with sort of what those projections were and where we need to go.
Yeah, and that's probably just going to be a little bit challenging in terms of at what point in time.
Yeah, no, I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, because I think it's something that particularly those of us who are newer to this, that's not something that we are that familiar with. So I think it could be, even if it was a quick presentation, I think that could really be helpful.
Okay, thank you.
In that particular regard, I'll be happy to look at, what I really would like to look at is, where were we when we started, Phase 1? Where were we after the first year in Phase 1? How many had connected? And then compare that to what we're going to experience with Phase 2, because different populations.
Yes,
And a lot of
yes.
businesses in Phase 1. We have a lot of residential units in Phase 2. And it'll be interesting to see how those two play out against each other, because we still have to make a decision. There might need to be a decision. It might not need to be a decision. Right now, it's 1 year. You have 1 year to connect. And there's a possibility there might be the second year, but we're hoping everybody, a substantial number of them, get it all completed in the first year.
Yep.
So it'd be nice to see how we could study
Right.
that.
I mean, the environment is completely different. We're talking about a new process. We're talking about it taking place during COVID. And hopefully all the educational work, all the outreach, all John's work has created an environment where people are anxious to connect as opposed to, oh, no, not us.
Do I have to be a guinea pig, right?
And here's John to say a few words.
And here's John. Welcome back.
Hello. I would recommend sticking to the 12-month.
Yeah.
One of the big things we saw in phase one was people waiting till the last minute, and they got an extra year. And then I found them coming in 20 months saying, what do I need to do? I think 12 months, stick to it, and then whatever's
Yeah.
falling behind, we follow the fine structure or whatnot. There's many legitimate excuses where they could get a deferment or something like that. But, somebody that just doesn't want to connect, there's options. If anyone has any questions, talk with me because I can point them to Aquafund or, there's a lot of solutions to some of their problems, but they may not know where to find them or something. And a lot of people will panic and wait till the last minute, and my understanding is it's an older crowd coming up, so they might clam up even more. And I don't want them to just say, I don't understand this, and lock themselves in the house. I'd rather deal with them for an hour or two and get them going. But the 2-year, the second-year extension, I think is out there already. People think it's going to happen, so I believe those people are going to just wait till the end anyways. And if everyone wants their flow to the plant, everyone gets connected and kind of clean up phase 2, stick with the 1 year. And anybody falling behind, we can work with, and then anyone that just kind of refuses, deal with them through the Board of Health.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah,
Thanks.
agreed.
Thank you, John.
Okay, anything else on sewer phasing, Tim? So then before we
Nope.
get to preparing for the January 22nd meeting and still waiting to see if Mike might be able to join us, can we just jump to the approval of the meeting minutes of December 11th?
Motion to
we've had
approve with a very minor correction that I've circulated through.
Second?
John, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, we
Oh,
need
we
to
have to
roll
do
call
roll
because
call.
Bob's, oh, did we lose Bob?
Disappeared.
And with that, I think we lost Bob. Oh, no, Bob's with us.
He's still there.
Okay, so roll call, Mary?
I, Mary Wright.
Hi, Jenny Farber.
I, Judith Bruce.
Hi, John Smith.
Eileen Bruneau, but he's not there.
Bob, are you there? I see his name. I just see him.
Here he is.
Oh, there he is.
So you're muted, Bob.
Approving the minutes.
Approving the minutes, you're muted.
Give a thumbs up.
Or nod.
So you could give a
Hi,
thumb.
Bob Mullen. Here we go.
Thank you very much.
It only took 3 or 4.
All right, unanimously approved.
Okay.
Okay, Tim, are you going to handle the preparation for the January 22nd meeting to walk us through?
Yeah, I could do that.
Or is this George?
Well, maybe just let me get you started here.
Okay.
Just so you all know some of the preliminaries, we're getting the announcements out. We actually took addresses for every home in the watershed. The watershed for Mill Pond, as you recall, that is a larger area. It extends beyond the mill race, but we wanted to make sure we were broad in our canvassing of people who might have an interest in this. So those postcards are at the mailer. They should go out end of this week, and that's plenty of time so people can prepare to attend the meeting. My understanding is Tim will attend the meeting virtually. Mike Gigi is planning to be here in person for that meeting that day, so that's a plus for us.
Excellent.
And because Tim is online, we thought it would the presentation would be better received if Kevin were to introduce the subject matter, and I would present the slides on behalf of AECom and Wright Pierce, and then Mike is in the room and Tim is available for questions and comments, which I think there will be many. So those are kind of the preliminaries of how we want to set it up, just so you're comfortable with it. I think that will just work just fine. We've already got a preliminary set of slides, and I think Tim wants to kind of walk you through it so you know what we're presenting.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you, George. Tim?
Yes. Let me. All right. Can you see the title slide
Yes.
here?
Yep.
All right, excellent. So, yeah, just a couple of thoughts. As I was putting this together, it was a little bit of a challenge. So I'm going to look forward to getting the committee's response to make sure that we were sharing kind of the key points of this study that we've developed along the way that kind of got us to where we are without getting too far into the details. So hopefully we're most of the way there and we're just fine tuning, but if I'm certainly open to any feedback on this, and I'd be glad to make changes accordingly. So that said, I thought that we should start with introductions. I mean, we can read the slide here, but basically walk through kind of starting at a higher level. What's the purpose of the study? How do we talk about water quality issues? Where's the study location? What's the approach that the study that was outlined? What approach are we taking there? And then spend some time with each of the alternatives. We're obviously not, as you know, that we can talk for over an hour about any one of these alternatives. So how do we boil that down into a couple of minutes, but give people a sense for what that alternative is all about, and then talk about how do we keep moving this study moving forward.
Hey, Tim, it's Lynn. When just listing those 8 things or however many, the first, just looking at it before you got to it, the phrase alternative review caught me, and it sounds like there's a different approach to the review as opposed to review of alternatives. Just a suggestion, and Mary's shaking her head in agreement. So when you explained what you meant, I got it, but when I first saw it, I was looking to understand that there was a different review approach, and that's not what you meant.
Yep.
Okay?
Agreed. Yep.
All right,
Thank
thanks.
you. All right. I thought we should give the committee credit for being on the committee. I expect that, I think that the contributions that you've all made are really important. And I think that the public may not be aware of who all of you are and the roles that you do play. So I thought this would be worthwhile to share. So I went back to the warrant article and pulled a little bit of text. I don't know that we need to read all of this, which is why I put in this really summary point here. We're just looking for cost-effective projects that are likely to improve Mill Pond water quality faster than the Phase 11 sewer project, is kind of how I think that the warrant article boils down to. We're not looking to have Phase 11 skip the line, but we are looking for water quality improvements, and we're not looking to necessarily completely solve all the water quality improvements. We're looking for at least incremental improvement.
So in the summary where it says faster than, let's, Mary and I will think about wording for that, because I know what you mean. You mean without waiting for Phase 11. The concept of faster than, so we'll look at those words and
Earlier than.
yeah,
Sooner
okay,
than. It's one of those.
Sure, absolutely.
thanks.
Okay. I was going to say, but it would still be faster, quote.
But the point
is
is,
earlier than, but it
without
was very
waiting
fast.
for it,
Right.
but.
Right.
Without waiting for it. But, yeah,
we'll do that. Yep.
But even if you did both on the same day, the alternative approach, because it's
Agreed.
primarily in
Understood.
water, is going to see faster results than wood soaring, regardless of when it actually gets implemented.
Understood. So we need to convey the 2 points in a few
Perhaps
words.
earlier and faster,
Yeah.
yes. Okay.
All right. So, just wanted to make sure everybody's aware of what we're talking about. I expect everybody in the audience is very aware of this area. But just wanted to call out kind of the nomenclature we're using: Little Mill Pond, the Race, Roberts Pond, and really just identify that what we were charged with looking at is how do we benefit Mill Pond, and that has an impact on how we look at where projects might be implemented and the extent of those projects.
Tim, I love this slide. I
Yeah.
actually wish we'd had this early on, because I think I'm fairly familiar with the area, but this is extremely helpful, and I think there's a lot of confusion about just what we're talking about with Mill Pond. You know, what is Mill Pond? What is Roberts Cove? Where is the Race? This is excellent. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And then this is the scope and scale of the postcards that Mr. Missouri talked about in the beginning. In other words, the people in this map are the ones that got the postcards, essentially?
Not exactly, Lynn. The watershed, the groundwater basin circle kind of goes up to Sheep's Pasture. There
Okay.
you go. That orange circle is
It's the orange
basis
circle.
of our mainland.
Great. All right, thank you.
All right. So yeah, so that's what we've got here. So then I thought we should talk a little bit about what water quality means. And I think that it's important to recognize that there are different standards. And I've listed 5 of them here. And different people are going to have a different standard for what is good water quality. And so my thought is that, you know, if any one of these rungs were taken out, you might say that the ladder is broken, but somebody else might say it's not. But really the point here is that if this healthy habitat rung, that's the standard that's used for the TMDL. And typically if you can achieve healthy habitat, then all of these other criteria generally fall into place. I thought it was also important to understand the different regulatory environments for the different watersheds within town. The Pleasant Bay watershed is a regulated nitrogen sensitive area. It has a TMDL. It has the watershed permit associated with it. The Nauset Harbor, Rock Harbor areas, those are known areas that are nitrogen impaired, but they do not have the same regulatory requirements or oversight at this time. And then there's other areas along the bay here that you know, aren't identified as being nitrogen impaired. And so there's kind of 3 different tiers happening within town here. So I thought that was important to highlight.
Tim, when you do your slides for the senior citizens in the room, could you put black letters in your colored boxes instead of white letters on colored boxes, please? I can't read them at all from here, even with my cataract surgery and my brand-new glasses.
Oh my gosh, I will change that, and I will be sure to call out the text, because I'm afraid I did white letters and a lot of bubbles here.
Yeah. But I love the different standards ladder on the left. That's another really helpful understanding for anyone and everyone.
But George is making this presentation, right? He's talking through it.
Right.
I think that, you know, with this slide, we now get into, you know, TMDL. Okay, so 6 people in the room know what TMDL, well, 12, because there's us and then the 6 other people. So I think we just have to be really careful in using the acronyms and to be really clear what that means and why it's important as simply as possible. Because as soon as we start getting into the regulatory requirements, there are going to be people who are like, oh my God,
My head.
So, and I know you've given this kind of presentation before, but that's my initial reaction.
So do you think it's more helpful to write it out, or we
No,
could
it's just-
replace TMDL and just replace with regulatory standard?
I haven't thought about exactly how to do this on the slide. I think it's more just to be sure that if we use acronyms on any slide, yeah, the first question is, do we have to have the acronym? That's the first question. The second one is, how clearly can we explain that so people don't feel immediately lost?
Maybe we call TMDL just state-regulated standard.
Great,
There you go.
Stay away from TMDL.
great.
Yeah.
That works.
All right. Okay, so here we're talking a little bit more about just making sure that we understand that nitrogen is really the nutrient of interest for the saltwater bodies. Kind of list out some of the things that happens when you start adding nitrogen to saltwater bodies. You get more algae, lower oxygen, more chlorophyll, more impacts to plants and animals. I thought it would be helpful to identify kind of, we'll come up with a better way to say this, but some of the craziness in the MEP reports, where they have identified different areas around town according to these healthy, moderately impaired, significantly impaired, and severe degradation. And Mill Pond is identified in the 2012 MEP report as significantly impaired. But the MEP report goes on to say that there's no septic removal needed, whereas others that are less impaired do identify recommended septic removal. And so it just kind of speaks to some of the uncertainty about what the regulatory requirement in the future is going to be for this particular subwatershed. So I think that was the point there. And this is just a picture from this summer that kind of shows the boat launch. And you can certainly see that beautiful emerald color.
Is there any, because I would expect that the question would be asked on this slide as to why a healthy pond has a 65% removal requirement and a severe problem has a 50%.
Yeah, and I think that is the point that we speak to about these is that it's very unclear what a future regulatory requirement may be, because it's hard to look at what they did for Pleasant Bay and apply it elsewhere, because it's hard to get into their thinking on that.
Okay, so I think a key point to be made in delivering this slide is the inconsistency of the requirements. And these are not our requirements, these are the state requirements.
So I'm a little concerned about going down this road, because that seems to suggest that everything is just sort of completely random. And that's not the case. I think the point that needs to be made is that there are other factors besides septics which negatively impact our waters. And for any given water body, it's going to be a matter of what is the impact to that water body? What is the cause? Some of it's going to be benthic regeneration, some of it's going to be septic, some of it's going to be better or worse tidal flow and flushing. There's many, many factors, which is why the Massachusetts Estuaries Project, in determining what those total maximum reductions would need to be, why it was such a complex study.
The key point then is this isn't the whole picture, so
So
don't get trapped into.
septic is not the whole picture. So when we're looking at soaring, we need to focus the soaring on where there, where septic load is the greatest impact to the water body.
Yeah, so.
In most instances, because it tends to be throughout town the greatest contribution. In most instances, it's going to be a direct correlation. So a significantly impaired water body like Meeting House Pond is going to require 100% septic removal. But in Lonnie's
Judith-
Pond, there's apparently other factors going in there. Otherwise, it too would be 100% septic removal.
Judith, I
So-
think you raised a very good point, if I may. The MEP reports provided scenarios for septic removal to achieve the nitrogen concentrations in the water body. The nitrogen concentration is actually the target that needs to be achieved, and it was always pointed out in discourse, I think, Judith, you'll remember it, that there may be other scenarios that will get you to the water quality that is required. So I'm a little concerned about putting the percentages in here now. I think it
Yeah,
suggests things that aren't necessarily highly specific as to what we're doing, and they don't necessarily relate directly to like the work in Pleasant Bay.
I agree. I
I
think it's
wonder if
going to
that
be.
second bullet should go away somehow.
I think it's going to be very confusing to
So-
people, and I think that it forces us to go to a level of explanation
distracted.
that is not going to be helpful, that's going to put us so deep into the weeds, we're going to be drowning.
Yeah, so I think the
Sure.
question is just to decide what is the one thing we want this, like every other slide, what's the one point that we want to be making on this slide? And so I think, I agree with everybody, taking out that percentages is, because that's just going to confuse everybody. So if it is around, the fact that there's lots of things that contribute to,
Can be said on the slide, but without necessarily having those percentages.
so we'll leave that to you.
Right, simply saying that every septic system in every home is configured differently depending on geology, et cetera, et cetera. That every water body is evaluated based on unique
Its own
characteristics present in that environment.
Or to get rid of that whole second bullet of Massachusetts Estuaries Project Habitat Findings, and perhaps just list those things with percentages overall of what negatively impacts water bodies, so that you.
different factors, different
different
impactors,
factors. Yeah.
a different approach to the slide.
So replace the second main bullet with just an identification of all of the different kind of nitrogen sources.
Right.
So actually, isn't that in the?
Bob, you're the scientist in the room.
I'm sorry? George, I missed that.
Bob Mellon has his hand up. I think he had an idea.
Oh, I'm sorry, so I can't
Yeah,
see
I-
that
and I
on our
took it
screen.
down.
Thank
I-
you. Bob?
I was thinking that, the nitrogen impacts, kind of, form the basis for prioritizing the phases of sewering. And it might be a good time to introduce that, unless it comes on one of the next slides, to show both the impacts as well as the regulatory requirement of Pleasant Bay, kind of to follow on from the previous slide as to how the whole process was developed.
So honestly, Bob, I think if you're talking about going back to talk about the entire Mass Estuaries project of how it was developed and what it
No, I'm
covers?
talking about how the sewer phasing was developed with the basis of impacts. Right, an interim slide here, possibly showing that the sewer phasing was developed based on the existence of regulatory requirements to meet, and as well as impacts by nitrogen.
Is that a talking point on this slide while we're looking at this graphic to say the early phases of the sewer approach focused on addressing this regulatory requirement in Pleasant Bay, and subsequently the phasing kind of works its way around counterclockwise around the town?
Yeah, I think that would be a good transition to getting into the, maybe the level of nitrogen impacts from a broader perspective.
But
Okay.
can I just throw in that I don't think that, I have two thoughts. One is that the purpose of this meeting is not to justify the decisions that were made 10 years ago, because that's already been codified by DEP. We have a CWMP, and that's already in place. And so the information that we want to get out and get responses to is what have we done around the town meeting warrant article, and why. And that backs me up to a question for you, Tim. Is a long time ago, in the Mill Pond discussion, you had a slide, or Mike had a slide, that showed the watershed and showed where the groundwater went. And what prompts this comment is that you now have a slide that shows where all the physical characteristics are, and it looks like it's a circle and all arrows point, this one.
Yep.
All arrows point into the Mill Pond or the Race or Roberts Cove. But the slide you had, or one of you had, showed that, for instance, the groundwater from Doan Road doesn't go into Mill Pond.
I think that's coming.
I did not find it going forward.
Oh, I didn't see the.
So before I babble on anymore, do you know?
So I think, so that one, yeah, I think we need to see the spaghetti lines that show the flow of groundwater.
I thought it
Because
was
that's
one with
not-
an arrow.
I don't think that whole thing is the contributing area.
It isn't the contributing area.
Right. So my suggestion for this slide was going to be to talk about which groundwater, if there's a groundwater pathway, what is the area that actually impacts Mill Pond? Because we have this USGS MEP groundwater subwatershed that is inclusive of Roberts Cove and Mill Pond. But what we learned as part of this study is that it's kind of like the yolk in the middle of an egg that actually contributes to Mill Pond based on the groundwater model. And so this yellow area is the one that actually, if you have a groundwater pathway for nitrogen, it would originate within this yellow area.
So then that, I think, is the line that has to be shown, that needs to be shown as the groundwater and surface water contributing areas.
But I think that
Correct.
the slide that I was talking about, Tim, actually showed that some of that groundwater flows not into the Mill Pond, but beyond the Race and almost out to the Atlantic.
That was with almost the spaghetti lines going.
That's the spaghetti lines. The quote, purple spaghetti lines.
Yeah. I can.
Maybe I drew the lines.
No. We definitely we had a graphic when we were talking about the.
It was around
It
the
was for the PRBs.
PRBs.
Yeah, it was for
Yeah, it
PRBs.
was around PRBs.
Yeah, and so we basically had something that kind of showed that kind of how the groundwater path curves around here. that allowed us to delineate this yellow here.
Yeah,
So this yellow is just
I
the
think-
outer extent
I
of.
think that would
of all
be the
those
more
spaghetti
helpful map
lines.
for this.
Okay.
And if that yellow line could be red, a bright red.
Yeah, because it doesn't
So
show.
It doesn't show, and
So I like a yolk analogy.
Add whiskers, change yolk to red. Okay.
So,
Do
I'm
that.
sorry, can I think we're still stuck on this water quality nitrogen slide. I guess I'm just trying to follow, you're saying, okay, here's what, this was the challenge that we were given, right? This is where it is we're gonna do this. Water quality is the issue that we're trying to address, right? That's the one before that, and we have the standards. And then we're explaining why nitrogen is the problem. Is that right?
why the removal of nitrogen is the
Right, so
solution.
removal is, okay. So, yeah, so I think this one is, yeah, it's just nitrogen, I guess it's, here we're saying this is the problem, nitrogen is a problem. And I don't think we have to get into nitrogen is or is not a problem other places, right? We know it's a problem, that's accepted as a thing. So then, I guess it's that we're saying that when you have more nitrogen, that's when you have these problems. You can also flip it to, this is why we have to remove it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so you can do it either way. But you're right, all the stuff about the habitat fight, that can just go, because we all know it's a problem. So I don't care what they've said about Mill Pond, or I don't care what they've said about Lonnie's Pond. It doesn't.
Sure.
We've already decided it, we want to fix this. We've already decided that.
Right.
So then we get into the pathways, right? We're saying, so this is sort of the,
Where do we remove it from?
right, where are we going to take it out of? What's the issue? And then I think you're absolutely right. That's when it makes sense to have the spaghetti lines, just so in case anybody really doesn't understand or wants to know. I guess it's really the problem. They want to know how it got there and where it isn't coming from. So I think that, and then you can start talking about the study.
Right. Well,
Is that-
actually,
is that right?
those lines also indicate time and distance.
Right, right,
Because the
right.
farther away you are along those lines, the longer
Right.
it's going to take for that remediation to happen.
Or for it to get to someplace, yeah, either way,
Yeah.
however you look at it. Okay, fine.
All
We're
right.
good.
Excellent. So yeah, so that's exactly right. So if I can just back up to here. So I'm going to remove this second bullet, replace it with nitrogen sources. And then I think just to bring it back to Mill Pond, we can say that Mill Pond has been designated as significantly impaired, just to say this is a recognized
Perfect.
problem.
Yeah,
Fine.
that's fine.
All right. So then we get into the pathways. So you can basically find nitrogen within the pond. You can find it in the groundwater, and you can find it in the surface water. I think that it's important to recognize that, again, water quality, nitrogen is found in the benthic load, but water quality is also impacted by stratification. So we do have alternatives that address those. Groundwater, I think it's important to say this because,
Yes.
again, as we've talked about many times, it's not intuitive that the water underneath your feet is flowing in the same direction necessarily as the water that's getting your feet wet.
Right.
That's a great, great line.
And then basically talk about, hey, there's different delineations of watersheds. There's a USGS MEP subwatershed that is larger but includes Mill Pond. As part of this study, we worked with that groundwater model and actually delineated what the Mill Pond groundwater subwatershed is. And so we'll show that on the next slide.
Let's say what MEP is.
Yes. And then in terms of the surface water, That's what people are more comfortable with, the idea of you can see water flowing down the street or across your property, and that makes sense to people.
Right.
So then I thought it would be useful to talk about what is the extent of those areas. So again, we have that USGS subwatershed. We'll add the whiskers to the middle section here, make it a little bit more of a
Whiskers.
grab your eye color. And then we'll say basically, if we're dealing with nitrogen in a groundwater pathway, we're really looking at this future red area. And if we're talking about intercepting nitrogen in the surface water, it's a different area. There is some overlap, but there's definitely areas that it's not a direct overlap between the groundwater and the surface water.
Good point, yes.
But I think another point is that surface water, especially if it's stormwater flowing into Mill Pond, is also contributing to the degradation.
That's what he's showing. Yeah,
All right, then it just dawned on me.
yeah.
Yeah, yep. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
because the
this black
surface
line.
water is things like, rain over lawn washing fertilizers, and that's going to be coming from all directions. It's things like stormwater running down roads going into, and that's going to be coming all
Land-based and so
directions.
on, yeah.
But when you go under the surface, now you're talking about leach fields from septic systems, and that's going to be the subsurface groundwater basin. That's going to be the directional flow with the whiskers.
Yeah.
like
So, I mean,
purple
if
spaghetti.
if you want to think about fertilizer, fertilizer goes down into the ground, but it may also
does.
wash off if there's more. So
Yeah.
a property
Two sources.
sitting here, the surface water is going to head south, but the groundwater is going to head north.
Right.
Whereas a property here, any nitrogen in the surface water is going to make it to Mill Pond, but your groundwater is going to head west.
Okay.
But in this area here, you kind of get everything
Everything.
where the two overlap.
Right. Okay, that's good. Yeah, very good.
All right. So then I thought it'd be helpful to just try to figure out a way to kind of break down how this overall study is set up. We started with 10 alternatives, and we're looking at looking at those alternatives at a relatively high level. We're looking for feasibility. How does it integrate with future work? What's the relative time until that benefit is seen? Is it easy or hard to implement? And is it relatively costly or not? That's kind of what we were looking at for all of those alternatives. And based on that, the committee evaluates those 10 and has a recommendation to evaluate just a couple of the alternatives in a greater detail. So we think more about how do we actually get to implementation? What are those steps? What are the additional studies that might be needed to do that? Start putting some kind of preliminary conceptual numbers to those costs so that we can actually start comparing the two and think about, how would this project go about being permitted? And then out of that, there may be a recommendation to actually implement an alternative. And so this first block, we're kind of at this red line right here. And then, so the next step is to look at those reduced alternatives in a little bit more detail. And then at the end of that phase of the project, then there's a decision to be made whether there's going to be a project that's recommended for implementation here, or at least to go on to the next step beyond this study.
Okay. Good? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're getting into the alternatives, those 10 alternatives. And we've broken them down into 3 different groups. You can control your nitrogen contribution at the source, and we've got 6 alternatives for that. You can intercept the nitrogen along the way, and we've got the PRBs for that. And then you can control it at the destination, and we've got 3 alternatives for that. So when you're talking about nutrient source control, it's basically you grab it at where it's being generated at the property level, whether that's connections to a sewer or modifications to the individual properties, or practices on those properties. But typically we're targeting one source of nitrogen. The PRBs, since they're basically removing all nitrogen in the groundwater, you can think about it as you're capturing nitrogen from any of these sources, as well as other sources that we don't even address here. And then at the end, again, you're just talking about that total nitrogen. But basically, the water and the nitrogen is flowing from this first block to the second block to the third block. And so it's really where along that pathway do you want to intercept it? And I think that one point that could be made here is the further away you are from this water body, the longer it takes for that full benefit to be realized. So we would expect things that are more distant, i.e. the properties out in the watershed, it's going to take longer for that groundwater to clear out of that distance between the property and the water body. The PRBs are going to intercept it along the way, so you're going to see that water quality benefit sooner than you would if you were intercepting the nitrogen further away. And then within the water body, you start seeing that benefit really as soon as the alternative goes into place, because there is no travel time anymore between the water body and itself.
Okay. And I will just quickly add here, Bob and George, I can't see you on this screen, so if you have a comment or wish to jump in, just jump in. Don't raise your hand, because you'll sit there with your hand raised and I will have no idea that you're looking to speak.
Got it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, my only comment is on the PRBs, maybe should say addresses multiple sources of nitrogen in groundwater.
Good point.
This is a copy edit question, or copy editing thing. In that screen where you do the study approach, and you have the box and it says, 10 alternatives, or is it alternative 1 through 10? Unless we're gonna go through and call them alternative 1 through 10 and label them as such, I would just change that box to 10 alternatives. Because otherwise, people are thinking, we've now shifted to alternative 2 and 9, or something like that. So I think it's fine in the box to say 10 alternatives. Unless we want to call them alternative and be very
And
specific.
begin to call them that.
Well, and then the next box down, just,
It's alternative.
Right.
Right.
well,
And
Because
I-
we don't know.
So that could just say 2 alternatives.
Two alternatives,
or
exactly.
recommended
So- or
10 alternatives, 2 alternatives.
Yeah, something, recommended or something.
recommended alternative.
Reviewed alternatives, 10 reviewed alternatives, or something like that, but we can wordsmith that, but just, that was just, because otherwise I'm looking for numbers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are selected.
So yeah, that's those 10. We talked about this slide. So how do those all line up? And where are they being implemented? I'm sure people are going to have some comments on this one. So basically, we've got the alternatives identified here with some indication for where they'd be located. So aquaculture is straightforward. PRBs are straightforward. Even the sewering to the existing treatment plant and to the satellite treatment plant are more easy to point to a location. But I think a lot of the alternatives are more based on an area. And so what I've done is called out that the on-site denitrification, the urine diversion, and fertilizer management happens within the groundwater sub-area. The pond aeration and the removal of the pond organic sediments happens within the pond. Whereas the stormwater management and some benefit of the fertilizer management would occur within the surface watershed.
I'm not sure that this particular slide and these depictions really does anything for me. Because they end up being pictured differently depending on the source. It's one thing to show the aquaculture in the pond, and it's another thing to show where the PRBs might be, or it might be interesting to know where the satellite wastewater treatment facility might be, but otherwise, it's a stretch to locate where it's happening. So I don't know that it's adding that much to the discussion, but that's just my view.
My first confusion with this slide was that it comes right after the study approach that looks like a sieve or a sifter. And so when I first looked at it, I thought, well, here we have all these alternatives, and then we're coming down to shellfish aquaculture, pond aeration, and removal of organic sediments. And I just, yeah, I agree with Lynn that this is more confusing than it is helpful.
And I guess I don't necessarily see it as confusing, but I would put it before the 10 alternatives to 2 alternatives to.
But it's still a kind of a mixed bag of how the pictures were.
Just list the alternatives without any particular categorization.
We've already done that.
Yes, so.
For what it's worth, I think you could look at this slide for a half an hour to get your mind around it, and we're all familiar with the things. We are going to walk through 10 alternatives a slide at a time, so maybe we should walk through those 10 and see if we need this one afterwards.
Okay.
You go back to
point.
the list.
Or it goes at the end.
Yeah, what I was looking at is possibly, if you have the alternatives, if you're going to walk through each one of them, that'd be fine. But then, layering. On a slide, you can layer. So you can basically show one layer. Okay, here's what would happen if you did this. Then the next one, and here's the affected area. What you're looking for are affected areas. And that's the way you've put them up here. So the first set of them affected this area, showed this. Here's the area those, and then how does that?
Well, but when you say you want the affected area, or do you want to say where it happens?
Yeah.
Because where it happens, the orange ones, the first.
Are way the hell up.
Well, but no, what I'm saying is, that's in your house.
Yeah.
Many of these are in your house, and/or then you've got a pipe, and it either goes to the town, or it goes to the satellite, or not. Or it's in the sewer, the stormwater management, it's in the street. Fertilizer, it's your lawn. And then the PRBs, that's a different picture.
Right.
So maybe it's a separate slide, but not layered, because it gets too complicated.
Okay.
It looks like some sort of pasta dish that's got too many ingredients.
Yes.
And then the shellfish, the blue ones, they're all in the pond.
They're all in the.
They're all in the pond.
So, I'm not sure
Maybe you just
what
explain it that way.
picture needs to be.
Just explain it that way.
Bouillabaisse, with all like 47
Well, I
ingredients.
think that does that.
Yeah.
This slide does that.
Right, so you don't have to have the map. If
You don't need the map.
Seems confusing.
Yeah.
Or that's, this is also the kind of thing where that concept of the map, if somebody raises their hand and says, well, I just don't understand where those would go, well, then we could pull up the map.
Well,
and
you
that would
might
be
do the PRBs, and you might do the satellite wastewater treatment facility, because
Right.
those would have actual locations in the neighborhood. They would be in the neighborhood. That would be different from in your house or in the pond.
But that would be one of those slides at the back of the presentation in case we needed it.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Always good to have. All right, now we've confused you completely.
Okay.
Judith, I just want to acknowledge that Mike Giggy is available. He's on the call now, if you need him.
Oh, great. Then, Mike, the
So-
same that I advised to Bob and George, I can't see you with your hand raised, so don't bother raising your hand, just jump in. And welcome.
All right. So I'll throw out this idea. What if I duplicate this slide, but instead of talking about, basically replace the black text over here on the right with just a bracket that says property based, and then these are going to be,
Town.
within the groundwater subwatershed, along roads, and then within pond, just to get that location clarified, rather than using the map.
I think just as is really answers those questions, Tim. I mean, you're saying that it's primarily managed at the property level, street stormwater systems, targets one source of nitrogen.
I don't know that we need a slide that does that. I think.
Right, and
I don't think,
Okay.
yeah.
And I'm further confused by in the pond section, the shellfish aquaculture, blah, blah, blah. It says nutrient removal prior to reaching the pond when,
That's me just copy pasting.
I was going to say I was going to ask why those were the same.
yeah,
That's, they shouldn't be.
you're messing
that's
with
a-
my head, Tim.
Nope, not intentionally, believe me.
Oh, no, that would, right, good.
Yeah, the bottom one is wrong.
Right, nutrient removal in the pond.
Correct. Nutrient removal in the pond.
Good catch.
All right. So I will move this alternatives to the backup in case we ever need it. Hopefully we don't.
Okay.
All right. Then we get into the individual alternatives. And again, trying to boil down kind of the key things that drive the understanding of this alternative and help us understand it within the context of this study. Again, we say it's parcel based, it's going to require a collection system pump station. There's a range of anticipated nitrogen removal based on how much of the area you sewer. It's got a relatively high municipal cost. And then the advantages and disadvantages here. I guess what we're trying to identify here specifically is just that sewering is, it's kind of the approach that everybody knows about. The town is getting more and more experienced implementing it.
The go-to.
I'm sorry?
The go-to.
Yeah. But it is high cost. It's, as you can see, a lot of the parcels that are going to benefit are about as far as ways you can get from the pond. So it is, the full benefit is going to take a while to be realized. And then, again, just kind of not having that regulatory requirement set in stone, you do have to make some assumptions about facility sizing, so you don't have to come back and rip them up if you can help it.
So as a primary disadvantage, do we indicate that it would be an earlier upgrade to the existing wastewater treatment plant?
So I thought about including that on the slide. I know that that's something that we really focused on earlier in the study. But I think that as we were thinking about what the phase 4 study area would be, I think what we realized is that once phase 4 is done, phase 5 is going to need a treatment plant
Automatically.
upgrade. So I think that
Okay.
that is actually, so long as yeah, basically you're going to be on the other side of the upgrade
Right.
Okay, that's good to
by
know.
the time you get to this project, unless you replace some of the phase 4 study area with this alternative.
Okay.
So it was a very important consideration, but now we're a little bit smarter
Okay.
about what the status is. Satellite is very similar, except that you are going to need a new treatment plant and effluent disposal. Your nitrogen removal has gone down because it's located within the same water body or subwatershed, and removal is not 100%. So that's why that goes down. Very similar advantages and disadvantages. Plus, you also need to grab land for the treatment plant and effluent disposal. On-site denitrification. Basically, we're just replacing the existing septic system with the IA system. We identify that we don't do kind of a watershed-wide assumption here because it is dependent on the individual properties implementing this. So, but what we can say right now is kind of the range of removal that you might see from each home that implements this. Low municipal cost. Really, it's the cost for this is the program and the oversight for this. It does avoid wastewater flow to the treatment plant, but it does put the cost of doing this on the homeowners.
Is there a possibility of also saying that it also requires, they have to go before the boards of health, they have to go before the building
Regulatory,
committee,
yeah.
all of the different
Permitting.
regulatory committees.
Permitting, right.
Permitting to basically just, as construction happens within their homes or, to basically redo their septic systems is going to entail a lot of expenses around the engineering costs as well as the implementation costs.
So under the disadvantages,
High cost, including regulatory something. I mean, I think you can put it in there.
Yeah.
Or just extensive permitting.
Yeah.
So
They might not even have enough land in some cases to put where this has to go, based upon what we've seen for septic systems being, put on small pieces of property out there.
And Tim, I'll jump in if I may. Do you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Mike.
Yes.
I really like that metric of kilograms per year per home. It doesn't really mean anything to most people unless they know maybe there's some sort of baseline, like you could put the similar number in for the sewer alternative. Then people would be able to judge one against the other. And the other thing is purely graphics. Call it 2.1 space TO space 3.3. The hyphens and the decimals all look the same from a certain distance. And minor comment.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sorry, just taking notes.
Oh, and if you're doing, the anticipated nitrogen removal, it's per property, isn't it? If you were on this previous slide on the sewer, so it would be, that's for the entire anticipated removal that you have up there, the kilograms per year would be for the entire area. On the next slide, you're saying per property, so is there a way to make sure that those are, as synonymous with one another, so you can make as Mike was saying, a comparison?
I think just to add those words, per property.
Instead of per home.
And a regulatory nightmare in requiring all this and then within a time frame?
Yeah, and what time frame?
Yeah, oh my gosh.
Oh, it does say per home, yeah.
Okay. All right. Urine diversion, similar approach. But basically, it's you have to do replumbing within your house to separate urine diversion, add some storage, and then haul to the treatment plant. There's a range depending on how you implement the program, or how the individual property owners implement it. So, yeah. Otherwise, it's a pretty similar to the IA systems, and we can add in the same note for the cost and
Permitting?
And permitting.
permitting. Okay.
Would it make sense to indicate on each of the slides how many homes would be necessary to implement the alternative to have an effect, to reach the desired effect on Mill Pond? Show a large level of coordination or compliance is needed.
I don't think we know that because we don't have a TMDL, we don't have regulatory oversight or determination at this point.
But the analysis showed, or the alternatives showed, particularly with sewering, the total estimated reduction in nitrogen. And we had some target levels during the study.
I'm sorry, some what levels, Bob?
Some target levels for nitrogen reduction during the study.
I guess one of the things that, as we're going through this, and I'm not trying to change the subject, but it gets to your point about, what data has to be on these slides in order for the comparison to be made. I think the question I have is, are we giving the attendees any kind of summary sheet which says, here are the alternatives and here are the 2 things or the 3 things or the whatever we think are important? Because otherwise, I guess I'm wondering, are we giving them too much information that they can't really, what are they supposed to do with it? Do we really think they're going to be able to absorb all of this in a meaningful way? And do we want them to have more that they can say, okay, now I see, I think of the sheets that we had, right? The
score
spreadsheet.
sheets.
The score sheet that said, okay, did this, this, and this, and didn't do the other things. So I'm just wondering how we think they're going to absorb this information, and if that kind of score sheet would make it easier for them, A, to follow along, and B, to be able to see the highlight of why we chose what we did.
I think that would be a great idea, because the first rule of a presentation is to say where you're going. So we're not asking people to help us make this decision. We're explaining the decision process.
And how we
So
got there,
what's
yeah.
the bottom line? The bottom line is we are recommending these things. This is how we got there. So tell them what.
Yeah.
Don't keep them in suspense.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Back to Bob's question about,
Right, is that, and so I guess my point was more, what are the pieces of information that we think we need to give to them in the presentation or have as a summary document. And it could be just that it should be as part of the total report, that we think that's an important piece of information. I'm not sure that that needs to be, again, does it need to be in the presentation to the public as to how we got there?
Right. Well, in that particular case, you would say that, you know what the sewer, here's, if we did sewering, here's the cost to the town, here's the cost to the homeowner, and here's what, and the amount that's going to be taken out. With these, if you would say basically, okay, if every home in this area did AI, here's how much you would take out, and here's how much it would cost to each and every homeowner in that area, on the average.
As a guesstimate,
And a
absolutely.
guesstimate. And then, if everybody did urine diversion, here's how much you would be able to take out, and then here's how much it would cost to each and every homeowner to replumb their home.
In the
So,
aggregate, yeah.
In the aggregate.
Right.
That then raises a question in my mind, for something like the IA systems and the urine diversion, would the requirement be that everybody do it within a defined area? Or would you be allowed to opt out because, or, wait till everybody else does it and, just
Over
take your
what
time,
period of
over
time?
what period of time? Because save yourself that cost if that was, hey.
90% did it, I don't have to do it now, yeah.
But if you're,
So I guess my fear would be, again, that when we start getting into these specific numbers, you start creating yet more detail and confusion. I'm looking at things like the line that says anticipated nitrogen removal, and perhaps looking to just simply simplify it to high after 15 years, low after 5 years, immediate in pond. You know what I'm saying? To bring that down to even more simple, rather than getting into 2.1 to 4.3 kilograms per property
Yeah,
versus 85 to 240 kilograms, depending on
Yeah.
sewer area.
I think the
It's
per
just gonna
property
be
thing
overwhelming.
is a real trap. I wouldn't, I think we need to get away from that, yeah.
but the only reason I brought those particular metrics up was just so that we show what we went through in order to get how we, what the.
Yeah, the comparisons.
The comparison, and therefore you didn't have to. We did it, so you don't have to.
I think we can say that, we had, I guess to the point about simplification, is that there's a lot of data that we had that we are not I mean, we don't say it quite this way, but, here are the factors at the end of our analysis that we looked at that we thought was more important. And to your point, Judith, the idea of quick, fast, long, or remember, we had a lot of discussion about what were the right words, but, was this something that was gonna happen sooner rather than later? Was this gonna take 400 years? Because that was how we began to do the sifting. We didn't do it based on, amount per home kind of thing. It was much more of a global
Yeah.
concern. So I think if somebody asks, well, what does that mean for the individual? Okay, well, we can
can
bore
go
them to
back-
death.
we can go
We can
back
bore
and-
them to
and-
death with that, and we can also say, we'd be happy to tell you about that separately. So I think that's a better way to sort of be thinking about it, at least for this presentation.
Well, I think we are going to have those updated memos on the website, correct? I mean, each memo that went through each of the alternatives
Right,
is going to be on the website. So I think there's no problem with referring those who wish to see a lot of detail and specifics to go there. I think
Absolutely.
most people don't want that level of
Right.
detail.
And I worry about this level of detail, even in the presentation. We're going to get so bogged down in this that, bring your dinner because it's going to be a long meeting. If
Right.
we end up with lots of questions on each one of these, which was not really the intent to have a full meeting on each one of these.
And in that regard, folks, would it be helpful to take the kilogram per year removal and depict in a bar chart? So you can read from left to right, you can see, oh boy, the sewer removes a lot, the fertilizer controls, the stormwater just remove a little. And you don't have to put a number on it, it's just the height of the bar.
Okay.
Sounds good.
That would work.
Could do the same thing with time.
Yeah.
And the same thing with time, right?
Judith?
Yes.
Judith, Bob had a question, I think.
Yeah, I've just.
You need a mic.
Sorry. Bob Rich. I'm just trying to think of this as being someone in the audience. And I agree that less is better. Less is better. All the background information is available to anyone who really cares. And we can specifically help those people, or we can refer them to the website. Our objectives was what could we do that would achieve in the near term something that's significantly beneficial to water quality in Mill Pond. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
And all these alternatives, you guys had to go through and evaluate. But bottom line, it was how quick you could get results, how much results, and then cost was a factor.
Right.
Why make it so difficult? Anybody knows urine diversion is an individual property's responsibility. IA systems, individual, I think it could be simple because we want to allow most of the meeting time for questions
Right.
and not a huge presentation and then you have 10 minutes for questions.
So simplify, Tim.
Yeah, so
But have
let
these,
me,
go to the score sheet, use the score sheet to drive it, and then have these in the back of the deck to
Yep.
pull forward to further explain each of these if needed, just to support it.
Okay.
They're
so,
nice, they're really helpful, but.
yeah, so here, let me throw this out as an idea. I hear what everybody's saying about getting rid of the bulk of the words here. So what if we just kept a real quick hit on each of these that shows kind of the graphic and really just the location and description, so that that's a reference for people if somebody doesn't know what urine diversion actually entails or what a PRB entails. So there's just a real quick hit on each of these. And then I like the idea of basically taking just a bar chart with each of the 10 alternatives along the bottom and just having a different chart for nitrogen removal and kind of show which alternative rises to the top there, time to benefit, which of the alternatives rise to the top, relative cost to the town, relative cost to the property owners. And just have a real quick, easy to understand. And then you can kind of say, these are the alternatives that kind of rose to the top. And then we can talk about how those were interpreted by the committee. So we don't have to talk about individual nitrogen removal at this granular level, or even, total kilograms removed. And then the kind of advantages and disadvantages that drove the decision would be talked about in those bar charts along the way.
But it's not just the nitrogen though, because the other key factors were the cost and the
Agreed, yeah.
time to progress.
Results.
The four I have written down here for me is nitrogen removal, time to benefit, relative cost to the town, relative cost to the property owner.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep, that's it.
And so see what we can do in terms of showing which of those, or actually, we could probably do, if you wanted to, we could do all four of those and just use just like a colored dot
Well, it's like
for
the
each of the
score sheet
alternatives,
that
each
we
of the
had.
criteria. Right.
Should be able to.
It's simplifying the score sheet.
Yep.
So, Tim, if I may, after you go through, after in your presentation as presented, you go through all the alternatives, then you say the recommendations for future evaluation, and you start talking about the criteria for selection, shouldn't the criteria for selection be first?
Well, just the criteria, that you just the points of what
Well,
we're going to
but-
measure this on. What are-
Yes, so
what we're
that
gonna
when
measure
we,
these
so that,
10
but if
items.
we say where we're, again, if we say where we're going, and then we go
Yep.
through alternatives, and people can say, oh, yeah, this doesn't meet,
Oh, I see what, yeah, just move this
Yeah.
slide to the. just
Move it
Move,
this
move
first.
this slide ahead of the
Yep,
comparison.
yes.
Right. So as we are talking to you about this, you see what it was that we were searching for.
this is what we were looking for.
Yes. Right.
This
Yep.
is how we got there.
Right. Yep.
Jim, since I'm going to be your weather reader for this one, I like where we're going here. I think we can just barely touch on each of the 10 after we show the criteria for selection. These are the options we looked at, and then what the recommendations were and why. And I'm
if people
a
wanna
little
ask-
concerned with the number of slides in total and the number of words that need to go with them. So I think you got the gist of it.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
Yep.
I do think that at some point, if a question gets asked about, well, why can't we sewer, that we need to be prepared to say that the Mill Pond area is not an island, and we would be having to connect many houses that do not contribute to the Mill Pond area at significant cost, because the pipe has to start somewhere, and it has to go by lots of houses. And so that just adds to the cost and the, and design difficulties.
Yep.
Mill Pond is not
Okay. So, yeah, that's basically what we had. Simpler map showing where those alternatives are and how they relate to the future sewer that's identified in the ACWMP. And then our next steps, got to get back into the details on these alternatives.
One thing you
about
could
how they
point
get
out
implemented.
is, on that previous slide, is that there's one from each one of the different categories that we had put those original 10 in. That this represents each one of those.
Yep.
best alternative from each.
Yeah, I think the next step slide just sounds a little wimpy.
What? What?
It sounds really mushy. Further, we're going to study this a little more. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what it sounds, and that may be all be true. And potential recommendation, well, I'm hoping we would recommend something. I mean, so I guess I'm just feeling like this is, sort of like what time frame, what does this really mean? It just seems a little wishy-washy.
Yeah, because is the intent to take a recommendation to the select board when?
Yeah, I mean,
I think, to my mind, it's right after we have a public hearing and get additional input, we are then ready to make a recommendation to the select board.
Okay, so you have to identify
That would
when
be-
the public meeting's going to happen.
It's the 22nd.
Okay.
right.
You have to, and put that on the slide. You have to say when it's going to go to before, afterwards, what's going to happen, and then when it goes to the select board, and then does it become a future article on a?
And is there an intent
next
to,
town meeting?
to try to have funding for what at May town meeting? Is that the plan? And to Mary's point, that's not evident on that slide.
Right. I think we just have to beef that up a little, so we know exactly what it is that, because I think the summary is, right, we hired the consultants, we put together this report, we now we'll finish our recommendation, whatever that means, right? And we will do blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, I made my point.
I have
Thanks.
a process question. This meeting was just described as a public hearing, but it is a community meeting.
Public information.
So, but it's public, if it's public hearing, that's
Different.
noticed differently. So, this is not a public hearing.
It's not a public hearing, because we are not a regulatory body. We are an advisory body, so we will be making a recommendation to the select board. The select board, in turn, will be making a determination as to where they go.
And-
So, good point, thank you for
Yeah.
that correction and clarification. But Mary, to your point, I agree, we've had a lot of process over this now, and so we need to wind this up with an
More specifics
informational
about
meeting
next
to
steps.
get additional input from the public on this, to finalize our recommendations to the select board, and move it on to them.
So instead of potential just finalized recommendation
Right.
for select board, yeah.
It just needs to sound a little more action-oriented and a little less.
Right.
I think next step is to finalize the recommendation and send to the select board.
Right.
Period.
Yeah, and I guess, I mean, I'm just curious, I mean, is that something, do we have the budget within what we've done so far to do that? Because it's talking about estimated costs and all that stuff, so I guess I'm just wondering how detailed or how are we getting this?
It has to go to the select board first.
Mary, the scope that, uncompleted portions of the scope for the project
Yep.
include an estimate of the permitting, difficulty, and an routine estimate of costs
Okay,
for each project.
perfect.
So we haven't done those, so maybe you put those in, get estimated costs, make recommendations as select board. We can beef this up to be much more specific
Great.
with what the
Yeah.
committee will actually do after this community meeting.
Lovely, thank you.
Excellent.
What else?
That is what I got.
So have we given you enough direction?
And that dead PowerPoint.
Thank you, Tim.
All right,
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
sure thing. Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're circling back to the update on fertilizer reduction. Mike, now that you're with us, are you going to,
Hi, good morning.
good morning.
There were two agenda items that have my name next to them, and I'm prepared to talk about each. I'm looking at the clock, it's 11:45. Both of them could be deferred if time is that short. But perhaps I should jump in and cover the fertilizer management one and maybe defer the one related to groundwater discharge permit. George, what do you think?
George, you're
George,
muted. George, you're muted.
Yeah. I think the groundwater discharge permit can be deferred, Mike. Those are draft regs, so I don't think we have to get into that. It's probably a longer conversation. But let's talk about the fertilizer reduction issues if we've got a few minutes.
Okay, I'll do that. And I'd like to share my screen. I have some slides. I think I have some slides. Do I have, oh. Do I have the ability to share?
You should.
You should, yes,
Yeah.
Mike.
Mike, if you have your cursor, there you go, you got it.
I think it's, here we go.
Okay. Of the three alternatives we're going to consider in more detail, one of them is largely a regulatory initiative in dealing with better controls of residential fertilizer use. So I've done some homework to try to get a better basis for all of us coming to some conclusion as to what the town should do here. And I'm prepared today just to let you know where I am. And I think we all recognize the beauty of this committee, that your consultants put forth kind of some status reports, and we get your input, and we then modify how we move forward. And so this is an early step in that further evaluation of fertilizer controls. This slide summarizes the Chapter 103 bylaw that what's on the books now, and it dates from May of 2013, amended in 2014. It's a pretty simple document. It establishes some performance standards, such as the time of year under which lawn fertilization is allowed, the caution to stay off impervious surfaces, the prohibition on application within 100 feet of resource areas. It's a pretty plain vanilla bylaw, but it's in place, and you have it. So there's a section called enforcement, and it designates the responsibility for enforcement to be the zoning enforcement officer. Pardon my ignorance, but who's that?
Who is that?
Is that you, George?
Not me, that's the building commissioner.
It is the building commissioner, okay.
Answered that pretty quickly.
Okay.
Came off mute, no problem.
But so notable, yes, it's a short document, but notable is the absence of any provisions for any sort of non-compliance penalties. There's no fines if you don't comply with this. So that's where we are. Then let's look at two home rule petitions that are in circulation right now. One is a ban on fertilizer use, complete ban except for fruit trees and vegetables. And the second is detailed controls on pesticide use. And why are these called home rule petitions? Well, the regulation of these activities is a state function, and towns are able to do their own thing, go further than what the state might allow, only through the home rule petition process. So town meeting acted in October of 2022 on fertilizers, October of 2023 on pesticides, and those have been submitted to the legislature, and there are two bills pending, HR 994, HR 995. So you have a pretty bare bones existing bylaw, and you may have a lot more meat here, a lot more teeth. I don't want to go too far with this because I know the principal contact, the leader of this exercise is Michael Herman, and he's not back until I guess maybe today or tomorrow. So I'm going to review these with him and beef this up a bit. So I'm not fully informed as to where this stands. But one thing I noticed in the two bills that I have copies of is that neither one of them addresses enforcement, which I found interesting. And a key question I would have is that if the legislature decides that the control of these activities should stay at the state and not be delegated to the town of Orleans, what does that say about your existing Chapter 103 bylaw? Does that go away? Do you still have that as a tool? I don't know. And I presume that Michael has looked into that, but I think my thought is that it was put in place appropriately before home rule petition issues were raised and codified. So I think it's probably okay. But we'll find out. So as I always do, I say, okay, let's look at what the options might be. And none of these is perfect, but I think it's always good to kind of look at the full spectrum of what we might do and use that as a tool to figure out what's best. So option number one, stick with the existing bylaw you have. Don't change it. Just rely on a super duper public education program to get people to understand that we're all in this together. Everybody benefits if nobody has a lawn. So number one is a very simple one. Now, and it avoids the thought about maybe having new staff, town staff for enforcement or regulations and penalties and all that. Simple. We're going to avoid that in this first option. Well, let's look at number two. Let's go the next step. Let's institute financial penalties and maybe even incentives to support the existing bylaw, knowing it's going to have some costs and maybe some additional staff and there'll be some financial aspects to be addressed. So there's option number three, number two, excuse me. Number three, a townwide ban on fertilizer use supplemented by a similar ban or controls on pesticide. So these three are in a sort of an increasing order of stringency and probably effectiveness. By putting them out here today, I'd like to, before I get to number four, I'd like to say, because for me to hear, for Tim to hear, opinions of the committee as to how likely is public education to be effective in fertilizer controls? Question number one. And number two, does it really take significant fines to do what to reduce the levels we seek? And we should have a plan that a plan B if the home rule petitions fail, and if the fertilizer pesticide industry prevail and prevent the town from having those options. So again, this is not, none of these is a recommendation, but I'm putting them out to see what you think. So who's the advocate for public education?
So, Judith.
Does anyone have an opinion as to how public education would be effective?
Yeah, so we are in the midst of planning a public education campaign on water use and sort of that whole thing around the drought and the whole rest of it. And as part of that, we're hoping to be able to include some information around, fertilizer, nitrogen, and whatever. I think it fits within the campaign that Amanda is working on now, which is the communities, Communities That Care, which is an initiative that the town is looking at to become certified as a, quote, green community.
We are a green community,
But there's another piece that's where we're trying to get this national award, and I don't know all of it, but it's part of this Community That Cares initiative. So I think we are looking to how we increase the amount of effort that goes into public education around, quote, green initiatives. So I think that piece is, this fits into that. We've had several conversations, certainly at the Board of Water and Sewer and other locations or other hearings about the lack of, quote, an overall enforcement mechanism for a number of these initiatives that we have. I think that there seems to be an interest in what are the incentives that we can use to reward good behavior before we get into what are the penalties for, quote, bad behavior. But I think that's an issue, I think that's a philosophical issue in the town. And so I think that's something that's being debated on a number of platforms, levels, whatever we want to call it. So I think at this point, I'm all in favor of figuring out how we attach this into a bigger public awareness campaign around a number of these issues, because that seems to be happening. Is that the right answer? I don't know, but it's certainly, I think there's initiative around that at the moment.
And there are also nonprofits in the Orleans area that are, with their pond pledge for the Orleans Pond
Absolutely.
Coalition, which has been in existence for the last 2 years and has quite a database of followers that have, and they do advocate on behalf of the town for doing water quality control on individual properties, fertilizer control.
But to Mike's point, I remember an individual in 2002, 2003, walking door to door in the Tonset neighborhood, asking people not to use fertilizer. That's 20-plus years ago, and we're still beating the same drum. And I brought up the fertilizer reg yesterday in a Conservation Commission hearing, and was met with silence by the very homeowners who were trying to protect a marsh.
So I don't think that you would find anyone who would say, don't do public education. I think we would all be completely on board to say you can never educate too much, and by all means, get that word out and keep on working on getting that word out. But people like me who might perhaps be somewhat jaded after 30 years of this are going to say that I believe the vast majority of people in town know what they should be doing. And at a point in time, if you wish to have education be effective, there needs to be the other side of it, which is motivation. And certainly if there can be positive motivation, that's lovely. But likely there's going to need to be negative motivation as well. So I think some of these, Mike, really need an answer from town council. I know that it is possible for regulatory boards to establish regulations under overarching bylaws. Is this an instance where the bylaw, as pertains to fertilizer use, can have a regulation added which specifies fines and which specifies in greater detail who is responsible for carrying out these fines? I know there has been some discussion on the part of town staff around a possible, I don't know if you want to call him an enforcement officer, a position. And just exactly what those duties might entail, I think, have not yet been worked out. I think there is a general strong consensus, certainly among this committee, that our existing town staff in the various departments and offices do not have the time to be going out door to door to make sure that our citizenry are doing what they're supposed to do, whether it's water use or it's fertilizers or it's pesticide application or whatever it is. Or lighting, I mean, all of those things.
Signage.
So there may well, I think there's a strong feeling that there may well be that need, and how that gets developed. Certainly there's this little hook on the state that says that only they may regulate when it comes to fertilizers and pesticides. But I believe that that was our reason, and George may remember better than I, but we pushed hard to get that bylaw passed very quickly in 2013 because there was some kind of deadline coming down the road at 2014. And I believe that deadline may have been the state being the one that determines who can use and how these are limited. And so if in fact we got in under the wire, which I believe we did, I believe that all of the measures of that are in place and would be considered grandfathered, anything that the state may have passed thereafter. Again, I don't know whether we can in any way add to, modify, change, or enrich that at this point. That's-
One last.
So,
I would just be, excuse me, since this is in reference to the Mill Pond evaluation, it's something that would have to be townwide. It's not
Yes.
something that could only be a particular neighborhood.
Absolutely,
So that's
absolutely.
one last little thing I wanted to wrinkle.
yeah, to John's point, I think the whether it be stormwater, a lot of the alternatives we've talked about, I think eventually would be townwide initiatives, but Mill Pond provides us the ability to focus and do a demonstration and fine tune, and so it's a step along the way. So what I just heard from comments from the group is that clearly it's hard to oppose additional public education.
Right.
But what we need to come to grips with is improved public education apt to give us a measurable amount of additional fertilizer control or not? In my opinion is no, but I think it's helpful and educational to go this step and look at that first alone. Now, with respect to penalties and incentives, there's several layers to this, but a well-worded, well-constructed regulation or amendment to the current bylaw would be needed because there are no financial issues covered in the bylaw. What I liked about the conversations we've had so far is the fact that, well, even if I think one of you said, well, even if we only got 10 or 15 additional kilograms per year of removal, maybe we're talking about fertilizer or stormwater or whatever, but 10 or 15 additional kilograms per year means 2 or 3 fewer homes that we might eventually need to sewer. So I think that's productive, but think about that in an incentive point of view. How about the idea that if somebody come up with a smaller lawn and swore off the use of fertilizer and pesticides for 10 years, that they'd get a 10% break on their sewer betterment if they're eventually sewered. Link the incentive to the cost we're trying to avoid. So there's probably plenty of similar options for that. So be thinking about that. In number 3, if we are successful in gaining the ability to regulate at the local level, I want to talk to town council and Mike Herman as well. Are we stuck with only the words that are in those 2 petitions, which are only a couple of pages long? Neither one of them cover enforcement in any way. So there's another process here. How do you, once you get that ability to regulate, how do you implement it? Can you modify you have to go back to the process again? How do you do that? So questions. So am I hearing that the added cost and turmoil associated with enforcement is not an insurmountable hurdle?
As long as incentive is also a word that's it's included in that particular statement. Incentive or enforcement.
Yep.
And, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And one thing I've looked at the, not enough to really report on yet, but there should be the ability to use aerial photography, satellite technology, to for every parcel in the watershed, if we're going to use Mill Pond as an example, for every parcel in the watershed, to have an annual rating in terms of greenness. So with nobody knocking on a door, nobody driving around in a town vehicle, but satellite technology that would tell you which homes in the watershed are which lawns in the watershed are particularly green.
Gold is the new green.
I don't think we want to go there. I really, really don't think we want to start doing that.
Well, our job is to put options on the table. And I haven't tracked this down, maybe you recall, George, but didn't SMAS, in an update of their Orleans fertilizer survey,
Oh, my God.
use that technology?
No, they did. They used survey technology to update the lawn fertilizer study that was previously done. So they have not used aerial photos to do that yet.
Okay.
There were a number of us running around town taking grass clippings and talking to homeowners. This,
Drones might be better.
Okay, so looking at the clock, number 4 on my slide here is an idea that I've been grappling with and not shaken out quite yet, but the use of fertigation. What is fertigation? It's the combination of fertilization, and irrigation. And a couple of Cape Cod golf courses are
Brewster does it.
using the water they pump from the ground to not only to irrigate the golf course, but also to take advantage of the nitrogen that's in the groundwater underneath the golf course.
So my only concern about going there now is all last year we were in severe drought. There's no doubt that this upcoming year we're going to again be in drought. We're basically telling homeowners they may not irrigate. And that is regardless of whether they have their own well or whether it's town water. Now, the only way fertigation is going to work is with their own well, because I think our plant pretty much removes the nitrogen that's in there anyway when you're getting through the town water. But I think this is a mixed message to even to suggest to people that it might be a good thing for them to use their irrigation well to irrigate their lawn, when we're basically saying, do not draw down water from our sole source aquifer, because whether the well sits on your property or it sits under the town wells, it is all one aquifer. And we cannot be using water to fertilize, to irrigate lawns when we may not have water for people to drink.
But could you do so in non-drought years?
I'm sorry?
When we
Could
get,
you,
when we
could you
get
do so
there,
in non-drought years?
A possibility, yeah. I know there are those who feel that we are not going to get to non-drought years. That part of the problem here is not just the rain that's falling from the sky, but it's the number of people drawing on our aquifer. People don't seem to understand that we don't have a pipe that connects Cape Cod to the mainland. All we got is what falls, and when it gets drawn down, it's gone. It doesn't keep on replenishing unless we get the rainwater.
Okay, well, looking at the clock, we probably don't have a lot more time, but the intention here was to get some ideas out, get some feedback, and we've done exactly that. So I appreciate all your comments.
yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Charlie's questions, or you can have Mike help answer them.
So, yes, so prior to your coming joining the meeting, Mike, Charlie had indicated earlier that he would like you and Tim to address the questions that he included in his memo. Is there time for that today, or is this going to have to?
Wait. We're over our time anyway.
We are 10 minutes over our time at this point.
From my perspective, there was some glitches in getting those comments circulated, and I've been tied up with the past couple of days, and frankly, have only just scanned those. So I'm not prepared to address them, but not to say they shouldn't be, but I'm just not prepared today.
Okay, another deferred.
So
Okay,
future agenda items.
Future agenda
would
item.
be Number 6 and Charlie's questions.
okay. Okay, then is there additional?
So the other one would be then just getting us readier for the meeting.
Yes, so I think that's going to end up being the morning of the meeting.
I'm-
That's our next,
Yeah.
yes, that's our next meeting. And I believe, Mike, that we're going to have you in person and Tim by Zoom for both our morning meeting and the afternoon public information meeting? Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
And I'll be in Orleans for the day, so if there's some other things you'd like to pile onto my schedule midday,
Oh, be careful what you ask for.
Oh.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
thank you. Charlie, quickly. Very quickly, because we're already over time.
Overdue.
I only want to request that at the meeting on the 22nd in the morning, the regular meeting, that we do address the questions that I raised.
Okay, done. Will be done.
move to adjourn.
All right, second?
Second.
We have,
Okay, Ginny with John seconding. All in favor by roll call, Mary?
I'm Mary Wright.
Jenny Farber.
Hi, Judith Bruce.
John Smith.
Lynn?
Lynn Bruneau.